Cześć, hello, witam, and welcome to Pierogi to Prayer, the official podcast of St. Joseph's Polish Apostolate of the Diocese of Camden, coming to you from our historic home at 1010 Liberty Street in Camden, New Jersey, the heart of South Jersey's Polonia for over 130 years. I am your host, Michael Matalevich. We've all been there. Storm clouds in the distance darken and gather, enveloping the sky around us, turning day to cold, dark night. The tempest descends on us as lightning flashes across the sky and thunder rolls across the land. The wind howling mimics the calls of wolf packs as it gathers strength and wisps through the trees. Thus assaulted, gusts bend them to the extreme as the weight of their leaves tests the roots to the limit of the terrestrial anchorages. Raindrops pepper the roof overhead with a cacophony of 1,000 individual sounds that build to an indecipherable avalanche of deafening noise. As we endure such onslaught, we start to wonder how much our dwelling can sustain nature's fury as the power suddenly goes out, leaving us in darkness and alone. As adults, we usually rationalize most of these brute elements of nature away, but as children, the fear brought on by the worst of storms and their potential for danger is very real. Early man, ignorant of the science surrounding weather, often attributed these events to the wrath of gods, showing their displeasure at the state of the world. In literature, the instability of nature has often been used to evoke tumult or strife reflected in the life of the characters presented in the narrative. Though the modern science of meteorology can explain away the superstitions and fears that surround such events, the scope and scale of natural disasters, made more intense in recent decades by climate change, lead many of us with the same feeling of powerlessness and fear in the face of storms that cause unparalleled destruction. At the core, we are experiencing a very human feeling to look under the wonders of nature in awe, and yes, at times, fear. Every year on February 2nd, the Church marks the feast of the Presentation of the Lord. This event concludes the Christmas season 40 days after Jesus' birth on December the 25th. Also known as Candlemas, this day commemorates when Mary and the infant Jesus were brought to the temple in accordance with Jewish custom. According to the ritual purification rules of the day, a woman was to come to the temple 40 days after giving birth and present her child to be blessed and named. In Christian tradition, the liturgical feast has long associated with the blessing and distribution of candles as a sign of purification, as well as the bringing of light back into the world following the cold, dark winter, maintaining the light of the Christmas season throughout the year. Now you might be wondering what the fear of storms has to do with Candlemas and what this has to do with the topic of our podcast, namely Polish culture and traditions. Well, as with most Christian practices in Poland, Poles brought a unique spin on the feast that was celebrated on February the 2nd. Thinking back to the sometimes frightening appearances of storms, and back to the education, or lack thereof, of our earliest ancestors, people living in rural areas of Poland experienced storms and natural disasters with a degree of uncertainty and fear that may be further removed from our understanding today. Heavily reliant on agriculture for survival, rain, be it too much or too little, could be the difference between life and death for a Polish farmer. Additionally, the construction of rural homes made primarily of wood and other natural materials made the threat of fire from lightning strikes very real. The danger from wild animals to people and livestock in rural areas, especially wolves, made our ancestors ever vigilant and ever seeking assistance from both the natural and the supernatural world. Thus, the Feast of Candlemas and this climate combined to form the tradition of the Gromnica candle in Poland. Derived from the Polish word grom, meaning thunder, the Gromnica, or thunder candle, is a Polish custom that builds on the appeal of divine protection to homes, farms, and livestock that is at the center of so many Polish cultural customs. The use of candles and light is one that is part of many rites and sacraments within the Church. the Paschal candle is blessed and lit at the Easter Vigil, symbolizing the light of the resurrection. In addition to the anointing with chrism and blessing of water, Catholics receive this light in a candle of their own as part of their baptismal rite. The practice of bringing these candles to church on February the 2nd was an outgrowth of these traditions and rites. It was believed that to bring the Gromnica candle to church on this day for a blessing would in fact recharge it for the following year as a safeguard against calamity. The lit candle would be carried from the church and walked around the property into every dwelling and outbuilding. Pieces of the candle would sometimes also be buried on the land for additional protection. It became the practice that when storms would occur, the candle was also lit, calling out the blessing that would protect the home and inhabitants from harm. In particular, the patronage of Our Lady of the Thunder Candle is a popular image reproduced all over Poland. In addition to storms, these depictions often show Mary warding off attacks from wolves. The candle's other important function would be its presence at the deathbed of its owner. In this way, it symbolized the eternal light of the soul, rejoined with the light of the resurrection as it departed the world in a reversal of the baptism ceremony. This candle was last lit at the funeral mass and then placed in the casket of the deceased. The practice of the Gromnica candle is still one that is seen in various homes across Poland and Polonia. Most Polish churches will have a special blessing on Candlemas and provide candles for those who wish to have one in the continuation of this tradition. Although its defense against storms, wild animals, and calamity may be relegated today to the area of superstition, I would wager very few of us are still unmoved by the crash of thunder during an intense storm. And our first instinct when the power goes out is to reach for a flashlight or candle to dispel the darkness it brings. It is in this very human reaction to the dark, in our reach for the light, that an appreciation for the merits of the Polish Gromnica thunder candle can best be understood. As we close this Christmas season, let us hope that the light of it will brighten the darkest of days we may experience. And should you have a moment when you are feeling just a little of that childhood fear from a storm, both actual or metaphysical, it wouldn't hurt to fall back on the tradition of your ancestors and invoke Our Lady of the Thunder Candle to help you through it. If the practice of the Gromnica candle has fallen into disuse in your household, perhaps this would be the year to revive it. Blessed candles will be available at St. Joseph's Church this month for those who wish to receive them. Our Polish saint of the month is Saint Hedwig of Silesia, or in Polish, Święta Jadwiga Śląska. Her feast day is October 16th, and she lived from 1174 to 1243. Born the daughter of a German count in modern-day Slovenia, Hedwig was married at a young age to the Polish Duke Henry of the Piast dynasty, the earliest rulers of the Polish state. In those formative years, Poland was far from the country we know it today. Rather, it was a collection of various dukedoms and municipalities, warring with each other over land and power. When Henry died in 1238, he advanced to become Duke of Greater Poland and High Duke of Krakow, and was taking steps towards greater unification of the country. Aside from political advancement, Hedwig and Henry had worked diligently to establish and foster monastic and religious houses across the country, including the first house for women religious at Trzebnica. Entering the monastery where her husband was buried, and which was run by their daughter Gertrude, Hedwig wore a religious habit, but did not take vows, so that she could still administer her wealth to the benefit of the poor. She was widely known for her pious life, kindness, and charity, but she also worked to promote settlement and cultivation of barren areas in Silesia at large, and even advocated against the death penalty. Although Henry and Hedwig had several children, most of them died tragically at a young age. Only Abbess Gertrude lived a full life. In 1241, she tragically saw her only surviving son killed in battle during the first Mongol invasion of Poland, and witnessed his descendants fragmenting Silesia into numerous dukedoms once again. Known as the Mother of the Poor, she was canonized in 1267 and is venerated in Poland and Germany, with many Polish ethnic parishes in the US dedicated to her patronage. Often it seems that the qualification to be a saint is that someone must be a priest or religious. It is true that by their very nature, those who devote their lives to service of the Church and its people aim for sanctity. However, as the life of Saint Hedwig of Silesia shows, the opportunity to live a life of holiness is available to everyone, including the rich and powerful. Like her contemporaries, Hedwig could have used her position of power to enrich herself or to manipulate the world to her advantage. Instead, she chose to aid the poor and propagate the faith. Her money, power, and religiosity were also no safeguard against a life of tragedy. The loss of any child, no matter the age or circumstances, is a tragedy that no parent recovers from. To have lost several, even at a time when such death was more common, no doubt took its toll. If that wasn't tragic enough, she also witnessed her descendants fighting amongst themselves for territory and power. Although today's grandparents may not witness fighting over dukedoms, quarrels over money, possessions, and politics plague all of our families. Although during her time, it was common to utilize religious or monastic life as a means of penance or even punishment, Hedwig took on a genuine religious lifestyle while also keeping a foot in the world. She recognized the value of her religion in a context that can be learned from today. Religious practices such as participation in the Liturgy of the Hours, retreats, and other inspired prayer is something that is open to all the faithful and not just vowed religious. Besides enriching our own relationship with the divine, it also serves as a model for those around us in a world that is hungry for good examples. Hedwig's equivalents today might be a first lady or the wife of a prime minister. Imagine the headlines if one of those were to publicly profess a religious life. How might that example lead others to the faith? Life is not easy for anyone. How we respond to its events defines our life in this world and in the next. While confronted with difficulties, do we trust in the faith handed down by our Polish ancestors like Hedwig? Or do we fall into despair and rejection? Do we work to pass on this faith by our example, even as the world around us may crumble? Or do we shrug it off as an empty value? Reflection questions. Saint Hedwig experienced a terrible amount of tragedy in her family through loss and infighting. How might we draw strength from her example to forgive those who inspire conflict in our own families? How might we see in her ability to respond to the loss of her children, to aid our own suffering, or support those in our community who suffer from the loss of a child? Saint Hedwig used her position of power to help the poor and advocate for the faith. How can we use our position in our personal life or career to do the same? Saint Hedwig was able to transition from a worldly life to a more religious one. How might we use her example to inspire us to the same? Are there those in our circles who we could encourage to greater holiness or even to follow a vocation by our example or devotion? An image of Saint Hedwig is depicted in our St. Joseph's Church above the main altar. On your next visit, see if you can find her. As always, we hope that you enjoyed our reflection on our Polish Saint of the Month, and also our look back on the history of the Gromnica candle. The mission of our apostolate is to celebrate and share our Polish and Catholic traditions across our southern New Jersey diocese and beyond. We do this throughout the year by hosting cultural programs and tours of the historic church as well as every Sunday at our 10 o'clock bilingual Polish-English Mass with Polish music and associated liturgical traditions. Please follow us at Pierogi Prayer on Facebook and Instagram, and if you like what you hear, kindly leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you listen to. And don't forget to subscribe so that you can get all of our updates. Until next time, saute some pierogi and go sit with a saint. Dziękujemy, thank you, and do słyszenia.